This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
The time is just headed for 9:33 a.m. and we're now taking a look at the conflict in Ethiopia, in the Tigray region. Now, there are huge risks as far as this conflict escalating out of control, and the key issue here is about threatening regional stability. And knowing Ethiopia, it is huge. It's a massive country, close on to 110 million people, which makes it the second most populous African nation, and also bordered by 6 countries, Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia, Kenya, and Djibouti. And should this ongoing conflict escalate, this obviously would be a catastrophe. And joining us this morning to put things into perspective and to understand what is going on in Ethiopia, we're joined by Alex Mpundu, who is a political analyst specializing in African politics. Alex, good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Right, Alex, let's talk about Ethiopia. Now, obviously, Ethiopia, absolutely critical to Africa. I mentioned the fact that it's got a huge population, the second most populous African nation, but also at the same time, looking at it from the region's perspective and knowing, what has happened in Africa in the past, where we've seen conflicts in other countries, how this has actually impacted on the continent as a whole. Just how critical is the situation right now?
Oh yes, I think you just spotted the flow. Ethiopia, first of all, it's only the country that was never colonized on the African continent. It also became known when they defeated the Italians in the 80s. It is also the second largest country in Africa by population. As you just mentioned, there's an ongoing now war in the Ethiopia, which could escalate to the neighboring countries, even Eritrea. But what happened is that Ethiopia, it's a federal state. It's a country that has a state differently, but they controlled by the prime minister who heads the government, but they still have the president. So the region of Tigray and the central government of Ethiopia, they've got a conflict that caused what is happening today.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Now, we know that at one stage they actually ruled Ethiopia for close on to 30 years, under a coalition. And what has happened at this point in time is with the actions that have been taken by the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, who ordered the Ethiopian National Defense Forces to stage this military offensive against this liberation front. Now, the key issue here is it's not only about the offensive, but we are talking of a problem that could flow right into the region and the catastrophe that I spoke about earlier in terms of a humanitarian crisis because of the sheer numbers that Ethiopia has in terms of its population.
Completely. I mean, after, as you just mentioned, the Tigray, their political party was on power they became like dictators for so long. Then when the current prime minister took over, Abiy, he did not stay well with them because he had to understand his constituency. He started changing people's position in the government, and you must remember that people from Tigray, they have the highest position in the government. So he had the intention of eliminating this corruption and stuff like that. So when he started doing the reshufflement, that's when they start imposing to them. But also, on the other hand, we must remember that the constitution of Ethiopia allows the region to be independent. So when I heard the head of Tigray, Debriteo, he said that he's not going to allow, they are already not allowing anybody to disturb that particular article in the constitution. When they held the election in September, which the Ethiopian, the central government called illegally, that's what caused the tension between them.
Mm. Now, just as far as the Prime Minister goes, Abiy Ahmed, now we know this is now a man who has won the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize, and this was for his peace efforts with Eritrea. And, having obviously been awarded with this honor of a Nobel Peace Prize, what does this actually mean personally for him as a leader and as the Prime Minister of Ethiopia?
It means a lot to everybody. It means a lot to Africans. You must remember that there was conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia for so long, for the past 50 years. When he came in, that was like his first intention to unite these two countries. He made sure that the collaboration in between them, the friendship, grows again. And also he has managed to destroy those political parties, and he affiliated 7 political parties in one. So he is about unity, and that's why they gave him that Nobel Peace Prize. And I believe that he took over from a dictatorship government. It can't be that easy, but from what I've seen and from based on history, he had a very noble intention when he came in.
Mm. Now, also, Alex, just to look at the risks associated with this conflict, and last year I had the opportunity of going to Addis Ababa, and I was quite amazed at what I'd seen. I've seen a lot of development, and we know even with Ethiopia, the airline, Ethiopian Airlines, very, very highly regarded right across the entire world, a gateway to Africa. So economically and obviously in terms of where Ethiopia is positioned on the African continent, this is a country that obviously holds a lot of promise for the continent as a whole and for the country itself. Now, just looking at some of these risks now as associated with this conflict and where this is likely to take Ethiopia. It's the entire continent, I think, that will suffer should this conflict escalate and get out of control.
There has to be a compromise from both parties. I mean, from when I heard from the Prime Minister Abiy, I think that the statement that he made, it was implementary, as it's causing tension that could easily incite any form of genocide in the region, especially between Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Sudan in that particular part of Africa. There has to be, I feel like, you must remember also Ethiopia held the head office of AU, African Union, and a lot of things. So I think they have to compromise. This is a conflict of rights between people, between tribes, between states. The president, the prime minister has to come up with a solution of compromising, between Tigray and they look at it in a way of moving their country forward. As you mentioned, they were sitting quite well with their economy, but now with this ongoing attacks now, it's not really going to give you a good picture on the African continent. And the world needs to know this, and the world needs to stand up, United Nations, African Union, and step into people. They've got already 2,000 people fled from Ethiopia to South Sudan. And the people that are dying inside, you must remember the media is not also covered in that part of Ethiopia. So it's very worrying and it's very fearing.
Now, just one of the most recent allegations that we've seen, Alex, is Ethiopia's alleging that a foreign power is backing the TPLF, and they haven't mentioned names, but apparently, according to some reports, this could be a veiled reference to Egypt, which is at loggerheads with Ethiopia over this whole grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Nile. So, which obviously is considered a threat to security. How do you read into the situation that, possibly are there external forces at play here in this conflict?
It could be, most probably, it could be when, I've seen also Eritrea's army being ready in some pictures and the news. But we don't know what's really behind this, and the solution only has to come from the central government of Ethiopia. I mean, if it can be the international matter, that's when you get the war that never ends. I think they are able to stop it when it's still very local and when it's still soon. But if it's going to be the forces from all over again and intervention of neighboring countries, remember it also has its own resources. So there's a lot of countries that are looking into that. So I think the Prime Minister, as the head of the government, central government, has to be very, very, very careful of the outside intervention.
What about the African Union, Alex? What role can the African Union play?
African Union, held by the chairperson, Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, they have to look in a way of unity, and that comes as well from the hero Haile Selassie from Ethiopia. And by doing that, it's understanding the conflict of region, conflict of Ethiopia, where they've been in a war zone for the longest time. So African Union has the power and the capability of stopping it and intervene in a peaceful way. But I'm not sure if they have taken that matter to where it's supposed to be. I mean, we've seen a lot of countries in Africa being in so much crisis, but yet the African Union has not spoken about those crises. But I think this is a big matter. This is a big issue from Ethiopia, and that's where there's even a head office. I am yet to see if the African Union can intervene in that matter.
Exactly. And I suppose, this obviously comes at a time, and when we see all this tension right across the entire country, we know that, apart from this particular conflict, there have been many grievances in the past and old scores that needed to be settled or that haven't been settled. And people could easily take advantage of the situation to settle some of the old issues that have been brewing over a period of time, Alex.
Completely. I understand. I think we are in a situation where we need to figure out what we have gone through as Africans and how do we overcome all the implicities that are placed in our way. It's not a time for regions fighting the central fight the tribes, things like that. I mean, we are in 21st century, which shouldn't be a problem of understanding having a correct understanding of what it means to be an African. I think the devastation of colonialism, the devastation of slavery should give us already a lesson to not kill each other at the moment.
Well, Alex, thank you for that, and we're going to have to leave it at that. But as always, we do appreciate your time, and we do appreciate your analysis when discussing these matters on Salam Media, on News and Views. We wish you all the best. Please take care.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Alex Mpundu, a political analyst specializing in African politics, joining us this morning against the background of this conflict in Ethiopia, which is a major cause for concern. It could have serious implications for the African continent.
And Duran Boys